Well, folks, it is 2:30 and we're going to get rolling. So thank you all for taking some time to join us here so we can talk a little bit about how we think you can leverage AI to unlock growth within your business. For those of you who I don't know, my name is Jesse Hill. I'm the president at Tier 3 IT Solutions and appreciate you joining us today. Through the session, if you have any questions, you can use the chat function or the Q&A. We've got Tinmar from our team here helping out managing those. And I also wanted to take a minute just to allow my co-host, Steve Wilkinghoff, to introduce himself.
Hey Jesse, hey Tin, hey everyone. Yeah, excited to be here. Jesse and I have known each other for a while now, and frequently do topics like this. I'm a complete automation and AI nerd. Um, Started life as a CPA, so I have a background as an accountant who got into the the data side. And my biggest the biggest risk is I don't stop talking about this. So they'll I'll get the hook at the end of the hour, and I'll have to just stop talking.
Well,
It's a little
and
bit, there's my bio right there, a little summary about me. So
yeah, and I was going to say part of the reason I enjoy co-hosting these with Steve is that he said, "Oh, I like to talk about this stuff." And truth be told, my experience in the world of AI right now is that there is a lot of people talking about AI, not as many people actually doing or creating or implementing custom AI solutions. And that is something that Steve does in his practice. So, the agenda that we've got today, it's a little bit loose. We'll call it more of a guideline. But Steve and I, we tend to dig into these things and talk them through. So as you can see, we want to run through and talk about how AI is, a very important not just technology trend, but a business tool, something that should be helping all of us to improve our efficiency, our effectiveness, take away repetitive, mundane, type of work. And, not so much, chasing the trends, but actually finding practical use cases and ways to solve problems within our businesses. So, Steve,
mhm.
you've implemented more of these types of solutions than most. I mean, obviously, we've got some things on here about what the big promises of AI are. Maybe share a little bit of your perspective on what you've seen, in real life with organizations who are um, probably at this point leading the pack in terms of AI planning and implementations.
Yeah, yeah, I'd love to talk about that. I find, um, like everyone, talk about AI and the hype around AI seems like it gets more intense every day, just when you think it can't become more intense. And I find in companies, there's a real tendency for us to get caught up in that excitement and think the way to win with AI or with automation is to kind of take these big, huge steps.
Mhm.
And what's actually working in companies I work with, companies that I've seen that actually succeed with AI, is it's what I call the ground game, right? It's actually, and we have it there on the slide, it's looking at things like that almost seem so mundane, right? Well, how can we be more efficient in our operations? How can we just make decisions faster? How can we allocate our team or resources differently or better? Um, and how can we sort of scale without adding headcount? And then when you ask questions like that, like AI can help tremendously in that way. And what happens is you end up with this compounding benefit where we'll end up with several small AI wins that compound. And a year from now, you're actually way far ahead of your peers in your industry that are still trying to take that one big step all at once. And they're running into over budget issues. Things aren't working because they're trying to, as the old saying goes, you can't eat an elephant at one bite, right? You got to just nibble away at it.
Yeah.
And I think that's the important thing that companies need to
Well,
have
and
that
again, talking
perspective.
about real world examples, and I had the opportunity to bring Steve in to consult with a client of ours that wanted to talk about AI, and this is the exact suggestion recommendation that he made was, to take, this really broad, all-encompassing business goal and really narrow that focus down and say, okay, rather than trying to solve a really big problem that's going to take us a long time to do it, let's find, one section of it that we could knock off in the next 30, 60, 90 days, at a relatively, modest investment in terms of time and capital and, all of those types of things. Because we all feel good when we win a little bit, right? And and the challenge with AI, what it talks about it being more than hype is that, man, it's changing fast. And so you've got to be nimble and it's hard to do when you have a big project.
It is. I liken it. Jess and I talk about this too. I think the right mindset around AI to avoid the hype train and the hype cycle is to think of AI as um, a toolbox. So whether you think of a carpenter or an auto mechanic, right, their toolbox has all sorts of different tools in it, but there isn't a single tool that fixes a car, or there's not a single tool that builds a house. They use the right tool at the right time, applied to a series of steps, and I think that's what is getting largely missed in the AI hype these days. People are falling victim to the thinking that, oh, AI is a tool that will accomplish a goal. AI is like an overall thing, and it's just a series of tools that you put together, but you still have to figure out what steps you need. And sometimes you need a specialty wrench, so you get that specialty wrench. Sometimes a crescent wrench will do, so you
Yeah.
use a crescent wrench.
Yeah, it got me thinking, one of the things I talk about, so we do a fair bit of work in the legal space and I went to a conference last year and I mean AI was the entire topic of the entire conference. And it's wild because you think about that industry where lawyers bill by the hour for knowledge-based work. And, pre-AI, they might look at a project and they say, okay, it's going to take me, 8 hours to, create the document, the framework for this deal. And then I'm going to spend 2 hours, making changes and fine-tuning it and refining it. And so when my client asks me what I think it's going to cost, I'm going to say, well, it'll probably take about 10 hours and this is what I bill. In the world of AI, we don't want to eliminate the human, but that 8 hours of document creation can now be done in 20 minutes or a half an hour, right? With the right kind of inputs and source documents and those types of things. Now, where people I think make a mistake is that they for some reason think that they don't have to still do the 2 hours of review and refinement. But the truth is, when we talk about efficiency and resource allocation and scalability, that law office can now do, essentially 10 hours of work in 2.5. Where it becomes a challenge or a problem is they bill by the hour. So are they now billing, saying, hey, it used to take us 10 hours, so, we're going to say it takes 10 hours, or are we going to bill for 2.5? And one of the things that we've run into, and Steve and I have talked about this, is that, in our businesses, we are in a lot of cases, established, businesses that are on this call. And if you're not building an AI strategy, you are competing against an AI first startup. And that AI first startup is probably saying something to the client base like, the old way of doing law would charge you 10 hours to do this. We're going to flat fee it at half that rate. And, they're charging more than, their time, but also half of what, they're getting other places. So real interesting the dynamic of how leveraging these tools is going to have to cause industries to change their business models in a lot of cases. So, Steve, we've got some examples of some business
Yeah,
use cases on here. I'd be curious if you can, share some insight into successful cases that you've handled, and I'll talk a little bit about the cybersecurity one after.
yeah, absolutely. Um, the automating customer service and support. there's so many different ones in there. One of the favorite ones that I've seen and has been most effective is if you think, this was a company that was using like Zendesk, for logging tickets for customer support. Um, and what they were trying to figure out is when a ticket comes in, I mean, obviously they have their own workflow and everything, but wouldn't it be great if we could instantly get the sentiment of that ticket? So, Steve just launched a ticket and he seems upset. So that's going to actually have a different process than, hey, we'll get back to you within 1 to 2 hours. And it was a game changer. And in fact, this particular company had some private equity backing behind them. And what they ended up doing, the legal team actually got very excited on that because their mind went liability issues. So from managing liability, not a liability from doing this. And so what they ended up doing was if there was a ticket that came through that had certain sentiment that made the legal team think this customer might, they were in a regulated industry in the UK. This customer might actually be taking some legal action, going to the FCA, which is the securities regulator, financial regulator in the UK. And let's get on top of that and let's solve this before it becomes a complaint to the regulator.
Mm.
Because a lot of those complaints, and when they pulled the data, they had the statistics on it. A lot of the complaints weren't valid. It was just a person who got angry, and the only way they could punish the company was to launch a complaint. So there was this huge issue. So a little
Which
bit of
then
an off the wall example, but
they're
yeah,
obligated to respond to and jump through the
right,
hoops to prove that it wasn't
right,
a problem.
yeah.
Interesting. Yeah.
And they dropped that dramatically just from doing, simple. And of course, and this is where Jesse and I will often talk like AI. In my view, AI is automation nowadays. We
Mm.
tend to think there because what happens is in that case, right, sentiment happens, something has to happen. Someone needs to get notified. So there's an automation that happens, and then predictive analytics. Another, a lot of times we can do AI now to do forecasting, and it's funny. So I spent 5 years doing machine learning before AI was a thing um, in a private equity firm in the UK, and we would build these statistical models that would predict customer churn. So when a customer would cease to be a client, and get ahead of the curve and help them not churn, or
Mhm.
send them some love, send them some. And now with AI, we can do that even faster and better and more predictively. Based, to as I've worked with software as a service or SaaS companies where, um, you know, the user's login starts, they're using it on average every 7 days, and that starts to stretch out to 8.2 days. AI would say, you know what, that person is at risk, but they're actually not at risk because they've been identified so early by the AI that you can get them very back on track. Why aren't you using the software? Here's some information. Hey, come to this webinar, learn how to use our software. Whereas historically, when it came time for that customer to renew, it's like, well, I don't use it anymore. So I'm
Yeah.
not going to renew. And that customer, and so that's a huge one in predictive analytics.
It got
Um,
me thinking. As you know, just had a fair bit of driving this week, and so I
yes.
listened to a nice long podcast about Meta, Facebook, and a lot of people think that they're kind of late to the AI game, but the reality is that they've been running AI in terms of understanding you, your connections, your interests, and serving advertisements that are focused to you for 10 years. And so they were actually early pioneers in this, and that's the reason that they're one of the most, valuable companies on the planet today. Um, I'm going to skip over to
It's funny.
the cybersecurity
Yeah.
side of things because this is an area again that a lot of the talk we have around AI is about new things like in the last 2 years and chat GPT and image generation. But like we've seen this firsthand where companies have uh, kind of used behavioral analytics more than signature-based threat detection and it's had a massive improvement in the number of threats that it's been able to identify, how quickly that we can respond to them, how we can get information across, not just one device, but across either an entire organization or an entire client base. And then on the flip side, the bad actors are also using AI to make more convincing, phishing emails and fake websites and all of those types of things.
I've even heard of some on that one, Jesse. I think it was last week I was reading. There was uh, the newest one now is a voicemail from the CEO. That
Yeah,
sounds like it's like, hey, I used to be like that email. Well, now it's actually like, look, I'm in the middle of a meeting. I needed to do this. And it,
yeah,
it sounds just like the CEO. So it's like a whole, and again, AI just doing all that.
yeah. And unfortunately for Steve and I, uh, just this recording that will go
Yes.
on, our YouTube today will produce enough um, audio content that our voices could be now used against us. So it's a
Which is why
double-edged
we use
sword.
voice modulators. If you meet us in person, my voice is about 3 octaves higher. And Jesse's got this big booming baritone. So you would never know
Yeah,
it from this web.
yeah,
No, I'm just
yeah,
joking.
yeah. So I think when we get into the content here, I made a reference earlier that, if you're not, an AI first company today, you are competing against an AI first startup. And that I think for a lot of existing business people is one of the realizations to really come to is that, imagine, whatever industry it is that you're in, imagine, you sold, you exited, you did whatever, and tomorrow you decided you were going to start a company to compete against the one that you're in today. And you look around at the tools that are available to you when you're not tied into all of your legacy and kind of the way you've always done things and the people that you have and all that kind of stuff. And I think that this lines it up perfectly that I mean, you can you can spin up an entire AI driven marketing team, customer service team, accounting, all of those things can be done if you're willing to take a look at them and take that step forward. So I don't know, Steve, do you have anything you want to add on the content we've got here?
Yeah. There's a lot of thought experiments going around right now on just that whole mindset. How many months away are we from the first billion-dollar company that's actually a solopreneur? Because
Mm,
you think about, like you said, this toolkit now, I mean, it's amazing what it can do. And so any business needs to what? Find leads, reach out to them, convince them, deliver a product or service, and then keep in communication with them. Well,
yeah,
AI can help with all five of those now with if you were starting from, a greenfield kind of startup, like you were saying, Jesse. So, that's what's facing companies now if they don't start to use AI internally, existing companies, because literally someone's going to say, hey, you know what? I'm going to build an accounting firm and I'm going to do it all through AI. Maybe that's a bad example because there actually was an AI bookkeeping firm that just went out of business last month. That was a huge funded one. So that was
yeah.
implementation. But
Well, hey, why
so
don't
which again, that's an intro. Sorry, Jesse.
I was gonna say, why don't we jump to the risks of
Yeah,
AI?
that's perfect.
The only comment I was going to make on what we were talking about there is that, we talk about all this capability of AI and, what it can do for businesses. We also need to remember that we are in the early days of AI. Right. So for most organizations, we've been aware of and had access to, ChatGPT and Gemini and, these types of, mass market AI solutions for the last two-ish years. Um, but now we're starting to see a whole ecosystem of, specialty AI tools, and people are starting to build workflows and integrations and automations. And I think that that's where those custom solutions that I've mentioned that Steve has been a part of, a lot of them rely on those. So maybe, it doesn't have to be the items that are on this list, but what have you seen of challenges with organizations who have tried to DIY their AI implementations?
The I think the biggest risk around DIYing it is I guess there's two big risks. The first one is I see companies, um, I guess the only way to put it is they put way too much faith in AI, right? They get the
Mm,
hype and they're like, hey, we can build this agentic AI, or someone has gone to or chat GPT or, whatever copilot we're using, a Microsoft, they're all good tools, but they assume it's got the same um, benevolent thinking towards your business as you do as a business
mm,
owner or a business leader. And you have to realize the smartest AI is, it's literally just a statistical model. Picture an Excel spreadsheet that's a billion columns wide, and each
mm.
column is a piece of information. So, as freakish as it is, what it's actually doing, it's really just this supercharged statistical model on the back end. That's
Yeah.
all AI is. And so, what it can't know is what's in your head, what's in your business. It can't sniff. Sometimes it can sniff out um, what doesn't make sense, but often it's, as a human, we still have that spidey sense. You're like, you know what? I mean, I wish I could ask everyone to raise their hand, but I'm sure we've all used ChatGPT and it's given us an answer, and we're like, not 100% sure. But it sounds like it's so convinced that it's right, it actually starts to try to convince you it's right. And so that's a huge risk. That's the first risk, is they're putting so much faith in it.
So I was at that conference yesterday, and we had a futurist. He gave a 1 hour presentation on AI, and someone asked the question, how do you make sure that the AI isn't giving you its hallucinations? And he basically went through a process of saying, okay, so use your prompt, put it into ChatGPT, give it all the background info, blah, 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 do that. Then do the same thing in Gemini, and then do the same thing in Anthropic, and then do the same thing in Claude, and all of these other places. And then take the one from ChatGPT and put it into Gemini and ask it to, fact check it, and vice versa. And he had this entire, 6 or 7 language models, that were fact checking each other to then put together a final document that then was reviewed by a human. And the way that he described it, it was way more work than it would be to have created the document on your own. Um, but to the point is like right now, again, we're still very early, and we still need to be training these things. We still need to be fact checking them and keeping the human element involved, throughout the process.
Yeah. And I think just on that, there were, so that is the biggest risk I find out of DIY AI. And the second one follows from that, and we have it there, is that wasted investment.
Mm,
Because it's very easy to spend a lot of money and time building something. If you fall in trap one, assuming that AI is giving it way more ability than it actually does have, you can waste a lot of money and time, and suddenly either you have something that doesn't give you the result you want, or even worse, creates errors that are hard to find, because you haven't
mm,
built inbuilt error checking. A lot of times we're building automations for accounting departments and finance teams.
yeah,
Well, right away, you need to have back checks in the AI itself to say, here's what I've done. Oh, but wait a minute, I'm not confident in this. Or
yeah.
else you could have an entire finance team entering things incorrectly with AI
Well, and that
and
was
never know
again
it.
one of the things I appreciated about that consultation you and I worked on was, basically saying to the prospect, the client, it's like, sure, AI can do this work, but have you thought about how you're going to, cite its references and verify this stuff? Because, you want to actually build a process where it's, doing that along the way. Um,
Yes.
so I feel like we've kind of touched on this stuff a fair bit.
Mm-hmm.
The futurist that presented yesterday, and it's a point that we've brought up a lot of times, is that you look across, human history, every new technology that comes along, is disruptive. It's going to change the way we do our work. People who used to stand behind oxes with plows, they didn't like the look of tractors in the field next door. Well, guess what? Those people, maybe they stopped being farmers at some point, but they became mechanics, and they learned how to, that skill, taught people how to build airplanes, and that, and so I think is a net benefit when we are advancing technology. And we have to choose whether we're going to be the people that are participating in that and choosing how we implement the technology, or whether it's being, kind of, forced upon you.
I
So
think on that, just add one sentence, Jesse, is, you know, it's ridiculous to think of any company nowadays. If you're like, hey, what's your website? Like, we don't believe in the internet. Like,
mm,
that's how you'll be if you're not implementing AI, because it's here, it's going to be here. So either you have to figure out how to use it in your business model, just like the internet was when it came out, or a website
yeah,
is today. It just stayed table stakes in the very near
yeah.
future.
I am watching the time because I don't like to go
Yeah.
too much longer than a half hour
Sorry,
on
I
the
warned you
thing.
I would talk forever, so I'll be quiet now.
Um, and so what I wanted to maybe just go through on the last couple minutes here is, if you're on here, obviously you want to learn a little bit about AI, maybe you're thinking about a place in your business where you can use it. Steve, where does someone start?
I, the easiest way to start, um, and Jesse has seen this work in people we've talked to, as well as companies I've worked with, is to forget the AI piece and just ask yourself two things. What is a very repetitive task or thing that happens in your company? Um, and how much time is it taking? And what you'll find is a lot of times you'll find very mundane things like, oh, we're copying data from one system into another system, or we're doing stuff in spreadsheets. And those are perfect for very small AI implementations that get you started out of the gate. Low risk because they're small, and also low risk because you're already doing it manually. Um, so you'll be able to know if it's wrong as you're doing it, and that's the easiest way to start. Like, it's zero risk. It just gets you talking the language, using some of the tools, trying to figure out where the trap doors are, so to
Yeah,
speak.
yeah, awesome. Like we've talked about is you can't automate what you haven't documented. So the better you understand, a workflow or a process or, a series of interactions, the more likely you are to be able to either automate or use AI to help you with that. Um, on our side of the fence, of course, we need to make sure that whatever we're doing is maintaining security. And security covers a whole lot of different things, but we want to make sure that your data is formatted correctly, that the access restrictions are in place, that you have like we talked about, compliance issues around if there's any kind of auditing or reporting and those types of things. Um, and truthfully, an easy place to start is to make sure that you have acceptable use policies around AI within your business. Coincidentally, if you're interested, next Thursday, we're running a webinar where we're going to show you how to use, AI to help you build an AI acceptable use policy for your organization. Um,
Very drawing the hand topic for the
yeah,
webinar. I
yeah,
love it.
but I mean, it is one of the most practical use cases, for AI,
Yeah,
is
it's
helping
brilliant.
you to draft um, starting points, documentation
Yeah,
for the organization.
brilliant.
So, if you are interested in talking about an AI implementation, you have any more ideas about how we might be able to assist you with AI in your business, feel free to reach out and connect with us. We can schedule a consultation. We typically partner with Steve so that we've got both sides of the equation in terms of um, kind of the data management, security, and implementations, as well as Steve's view around how to actually build, map the workflows, build the automations, and integrate AI into those processes. So I haven't been watching. I don't know if anybody had posted any questions in the chat. If you do have any questions, we're happy to stick around and discuss those. If you don't, I'm just going to say thank you for joining us today. Really appreciate it. And if you want to connect, please shoot us an email. And thank you, Steve, for hopping on to help us out.
Thanks, Jesse. Fun as always.
Yeah.
I will go back to my someone. I'll go back to
Yeah, just
my nerd
check
cave now.
next there. Thanks, Julio. All right, we'll give it a minute, see if anyone throws any questions in there. All right. Thanks again, Steve. Have a great day.
Thanks, Jesse. See you later. See you,
Bye.
Tin.